So tonight, here's what you need to know. America, it is getting late, but it's never too late as long as we have tomorrow. We need to keep in mind not only how bad things really are now, but how good things used to be and how good things can be again. While John McCain may have served his country honorably in the past, we have to remember the past is never where America finds her future. Chris Wilson is a Republican strategist and CEO of Wilson Research Strategies, and Jonathan Allen is a reporter for Congressional Quarterly. Chris, let me start with you. I like John McCain. I mean, it didn't sound like it in that monologue. I like John McCain because he bucks the system. He doesn't care. He just goes after what he believes, and he stays there. Unfortunately, is it just me that thinks he's wrong on almost everything except the troop surge?
Well, it's not, and I think one of the challenges that McCain has is taking that message to the voters and convincing Republican primary voters that he's reconsidered his position on amnesty, he's reconsidered his position on campaign finance. He'd go back, and if he had to do over again, he'd vote for the Bush tax cuts.
How is this guy not a flip-flopper? How does he get away with saying Romney is a flip-flopper? Good God almighty, man.
McCain has this staying power that I think nothing else you have to respect. 6 months ago, if we'd been talking about McCain, we would have been laughed off the air, and now it's actually odds-on favorite that he is, well, he's the front-runner today for the nomination. Who knows who the odds-on favorite is after tonight. But it's a staying power that he exhibits that I think a lot of Republican primary voters have a habit of falling in line, rather where Democratic primary voters often fall in love, and when we fall in line, McCain seems the guy to get in line behind right now, and that's really, I think, what's leading him to the top of the polls.
Jonathan, can you explain it better than that? Do you have a better explanation?
Well, when I talked to voters in New Hampshire, Glenn, a lot of them said, I don't agree with McCain on all the issues, but I really respect his leadership, his willingness to take a courageous stand.
But he's leading in the wrong way.
But they cannot disagree with him on every issue for him to win. I think what he's going to try to do is try to show Republican voters that he is conservative on things like spending. He's been a big government waste cutter in Washington. That's been one of his profiles. And, of course, he's been pro-life. And I think what he has to do is sell to social conservatives and to fiscal conservatives some of those issues now that he's gotten through New Hampshire, where voters have an affinity for his maverick streak. And I think a lot of what goes on with him isn't that it's not that he's conservative, it's that he's not Republican. And he ends up getting beat up a lot by the Republican establishment when he does things like the McCain-Feingold reform, which I know a lot of conservatives don't like, but also really hurt the Republican Party a lot.
I will have to tell you this. I've generally voted Republican my whole life, but I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. I don't really care about the party, and I think for the first time, most people, at least in the Republican Party, feel the same way. They don't really care about that stupid elephant. Shut up and have the elephant stop crapping in my living room. What conservatives are looking for is somebody who will be fiscally responsible, who understands the economy, who understands war, who understands Islamic extremism. McCain is pretty good on the war, and yet he's done some really horrible things. But when it comes to the economy, I don't think this guy gets it at all.
Well, Glenn, you're exactly right. And I think the things that you bring up in terms of what Republican primary voters are looking for is what they're looking for. And right now, they see McCain as having the most consistent message on those in the states in which he is doing as well as he is. And as John mentioned, in terms of his history of cutting spending, he's done a very good job emphasizing that history of fighting for things, wasteful spending projects. And I think that's why, again, you've seen him sort of have this resurgence in the polls that no one would have expected a few months ago.
Okay, let me flip this around. And you guys prove me wrong here, because this is the one thing I don't understand. I believe that conservatives are looking for an actual conservative, not somebody who just claims they are, but they are actually conservative. But that doesn't explain, it doesn't work when you say, well, wait a minute, there's Fred Thompson and there's Duncan Hunter. Those guys are both real conservatives. Why don't they have support?
Well, you can give a million reasons why Fred Thompson's campaign hasn't gotten off and taken hold, and I think we'd be here way longer than the time we've got to examine each one of those. Duncan Hunter, there just hasn't been the money to illustrate the type of candidate he would be, and I think that's a real challenge. You've got someone who is a House member trying to run for Congress. That's why it's been hundreds of years before we've elected one. I mean, it's just a real challenging opportunity.
Jonathan, I have Newt Gingrich on tomorrow on the radio program. He was just on a Rush Limbaugh program, and Rush and he got into an argument that whether or not the Reagan era was over. I got to tell you, part of me, I think it is, because people have lost touch with what Reagan was. It's like almost a cartoon or a caricature now. Everybody's claiming to be Reagan, and none of them are.
What you're seeing, Glenn, I think is a real division among social conservatives who used to be Democrats, who came to the Republican Party in the 1960s and 1970s, and the traditional establishment fiscal conservatives. And as long as that coalition can hold together, you continue to have the Reagan era. And when it falls apart, maybe the Reagan era is over. I think it's a little early to say the Reagan era is over before Democrats have won the White House with anyone other than Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, Southern governors.
Right. Well, and to say that the Reagan era is over, it's only over because I just don't think that there is somebody out there that is leading the Republicans like Ronald Reagan did. Thanks, guys.